Thank you, everybody. Hello, I am Oakwalker again, and over probably there on your screen is going to be my friend Stronghorse Caldwell. We are Earth Medicine for the Soul. This is a podcast that we do on a regular basis for sharing issues and ideas and our knowings about what it means to be in the world in a slightly different way. We come from traditions of shamanism and animism in our training. We're both born into Western culture, so we've had an opportunity in our lives to make the shift from predominantly uh, Western mindset and into more of indigenously oriented mindset. And that's actually what we want to talk about today because the things that are going on around the globe are indicative of the fact that it doesn't seem like the old Western mindset is working out very well. And there's a whole lot of things that are changing. So, what, Frank, would you do if you needed to start right now changing your universal point of view?
Whoa, that's a big question, because when I mean,
Oh man. Okay. Let me
ended up at a workshop, and
yep.
I had like zero interest in going to workshops, but I ended up in one, and that's kind of a long story. But anyway, I on the way back home, I'm driving up I-35 from Waxahachie up to Dallas. I was living in Dallas at the time, and I received what's called the knock of the spirit. And this voice came in and said, "You found that which you have been searching for." Although consciously I'd not been searching for anything, apparently I had been.
Yeah.
And that, and that voice came in and just pierced my heart like a knife, man. And it opened me up like a ripe watermelon. And I'm driving up 35, bawling like a baby, praying that I won't die,
Uh-huh.
you know,
I'm not done
by
yet.
running off the road or say I can't save, I can't stop crying. I mean, it was just so. Let me say this. The reason I think I want to focus on this, or we should be focusing on this, is because in most of the discussions that I've seen on the internet regarding the shift in the new world, they're talking about how there's going to be a parallel timelines. There's going to be parallel worlds, and in one world you're going to have this continual relationship with domination and control and greed and accumulating and the yada yada yada, all the things that colonialism has brought to us. And on the other side, you're going to have the people who respect the planet, who respect the earth, who understand what it's like to live in a conscious world. And so, these two worlds are these two timelines are going to coexist simultaneously. Yet, at some point, one timeline is not going to become conscious of the other. As I understand it, I mean, this is certainly a concept. This has never happened. So it's never happened ever, from what I understand, in the universe or anywhere before. This is a first time event, but we're trying to help people understand what the differentiation is between these two timelines, because you're going to have to make a choice at some point. You're going to have to say, "Hey, this is where I want to go with this, and this is where I want to be. How do I get there?" And so a lot of what we're talking about on these podcasts is we're trying to educate people to you can make a choice. You have a choice, and it can start with something as simple as, all right, I'm going to give this talking tree ceremony a go. I mean, when I was
Uh-huh.
teaching and when I was educating people, that's generally where I would start. I would send them out to do a talking tree ceremony. And,
Hmm.
and, and I would send them out, and they would, you know, either on my land or someplace else, and I'd just find a tree that calls to you, sit down next to it, put your back to it, know which direction you're sitting. And then, in each direction, we had a different question. And you were to sit there in the south, for instance, and you're with your back on against the tree, and you would say, "Why am I here?"
Uh-huh.
And you'd listen, just listen, And then if you didn't get anything, then move to the next position, which would be west, right? Moving in a clockwise
Yeah.
direction. And then you say, "Where did I come from?" And then you shut up and you
Uh,
listen. Okay.
uh-huh.
And then if you get something or you hear something or you don't hear something, when you feel complete, move to the north. And then you ask, "Where am I going?" And you shut up and you listen, and then
Mhm.
again, you move into the east, lean up against a tree and say, um, "Why am I here?" And 9 times out of 10, everybody would get something. A lot of times they would get something, but they wouldn't recognize that they were getting something. Like I
Yeah.
process them and they go, "Oh, nothing really happened," but I heard something about I needed to like that. Like, well, that was it. That's what you went out to hear. Oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah.
They could they don't they hadn't exercised their intuition and intuitives enough to recognize what's happening, and their higher self was coming through to them, but it was like they're not used to it, so there's no place in their mind for that to land. And then that's why processing was so important,
Yeah.
because you take people through and say, "No, something did happen," or I've put people out on ceremony and they said, "Nah, nothing really happened, but some deer came in from the north," and then I said, "Well, that's a message, the animal world's speaking to you, or yeah, or I saw a shooting star in the northwest," and so we would process them based on what they were experiencing, whether they knew what that meant or not, and we try to
Exactly.
give them insight, give them insight. Well, what about this? And you'd see them go, "Oh God, it really does make sense." So that's a long answer to your question, but essentially, you just need to start out easy and simple and do
Hmm.
something that maybe for you to go out there and sit with a tree for an hour is as radical as you can possibly imagine. But it's a very simple, it doesn't involve anybody. Nobody's got to know anything. You're just there with this tree. End of story. If you get something, great. If you don't, that's fine too. You're not there to perform. You're there to learn your authentic self. You're opening the the gateway to your authenticity. So do it a second time and a third time until
Yes.
you get like, okay, I think something's going on here, and once you do that and you start accepting it, now you've established a rapport with the trees. Now you've established a sense of respect. Like, it's
Or
like
trees
if
in
you came to
general.
me and you were trying to get me to hear something and I kept saying, "Man, what do you know?"
Right.
I mean, you
Which is a thing.
don't
That's
anymore. So, but if you're like, "God, that's a good point, man. I never thought of it like that." Now we've established a rapport. We've established a sense of communication. And so, you know, that opens us up to go into another level and another level. And you and I have done that over the years, whether we, wanted to or not. I mean, we have. We've just kind of gone back and forth into this thing of where, we've established a mutual sense of respect for one another. So now we work together in a mutually beneficial capacity in ways that we hardly probably ever never expected when we started out,
oh, totally. Yeah. You touched on three key points, I think, when in all that you just said, which was all very good and beautiful. But I heard three words that really stuck out for me there. And one was intuition. We are indoctrinated in our educational systems, in our Western culture, and uh, in our basic, scientific um, bias. or prejudices, if you will, to distrust intuition as a source of information. This is really, really off base, actually, although intuition can lead you astray, and oral traditions aren't going to be the exact science that science would like them to be. Approached carefully and respectfully, intuition is the key to hearing once again that still small voice within you. Okay, and if you don't trust intuition at all, you won't be able to quiet yourself down to that point of surrender that is necessary for you to fully silence yourself. The other thing I heard in there was we. So we were processing on this, and it's important to note that you were in a group when you're doing this, because that's where you can say, even if you don't know what that meant, all of these people who don't know what that meant can throw ideas into the middle of the circle. The middle of the circle is the cauldron of your event, right? It's where all of the energy comes together and it gets stirred up and cooked up into a thing that everybody can relate to. And so as you put that all together in your circle, um, then people are going to start to see where the meaning lies for them, right? They're going to take out of that. Their things are going to go, oh, that's an interesting point. It never occurred to me that feeling afraid was actually a piece of information that's going to help me get through this process, right? As opposed to just trying to be resistant to the whole thing. And so that's what I got out of that. There was
Yeah, I think
go.
another important part of that is that, if you're in a group, particularly when you're dealing with something that is abstract as this, I mean, it is abstract, particularly, I mean, it's not necessarily abstract for you and I because we've been doing this for so many years. But when
Yeah,
you
you
first
get kind of
start
used to
out,
it.
it's extremely abstract,
Hmm.
you know? And so when you're in a group of people and you hear somebody else say, yeah, I was out there and this happened and that experience and it related to, well, my father or whatever, and all you see people around the circle go, God, I had the same thing, and
Yeah.
is if you hear other people speak to it in a way that it meant something to them, then it gives you permission to say, oh, well, something did happen and that I should have paid attention to it. And attention is the key word. That's
Hmm.
that's really the key word, is we have to learn. We have a term called catching minimal chance. And catching minimal chance is something happens in your immediate vicinity that's really designed to catch your attention. And it catches your attention to the degree that you are almost captivated by it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I met my wife. I was in Kinko's and I was making copies, and in the machine to the right of me, there's nobody on it, and the paper feeder started going round, 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 and I'm like, what's going on with that? And this voice behind me goes, well, it might be magic, darling. And I turn around and went, you know what? It just might be. And so that was it. I realized at that moment this was something that was grabbing my attention for a reason. What is it? And it spoke up, fortunately, to me, and I went, okay, well, I guess I better follow through this. Fortunately, I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
But I could have easily blown that off. I mean, I could easily,
You shout
just
it
turn around and
over
go,
it.
"Who are you? What do you
Yeah.
know?"
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that the training is watch how things call to your attention, and the way to do that is like you said before in the previous podcast is learn how to shut up, you
Uh-huh.
know, learn how to be quiet, man,
Yeah.
and see what happens, see what calls your attention, and then try to figure out why is it calling your attention, because the world today it has been designed specifically by the controllers
Oh, okay. By the controllers
Survival
and
fear mode to keep you from doing exactly what we're talking about.
hmm
Because if you want to hear the voice of God, you better master this because that's where it comes through.
Yep.
Whether it comes through one of the angels or your spirit guide or whatever it comes to, or if it comes directly, that's where it comes through. When you shut up and learn to listen and open yourself up to a potential or some possibilities, that you develop within yourself the talent and the opportunity to benefit from that messaging.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it continues to open and grow and blossom. It's the lotus, man. And you can't get enlightened without that. I mean, that's the key to
Yeah.
starting that whole process. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do. The words I heard you say were just was exactly what was resounding in my head that came to me actually from my sister and when she was alive and she said, Dad used to say, and as soon as she got into that, I'm like, I don't know. We didn't have the best relationship. Dad used to say, and one of the things that I never forgot was he used to say the hardest thing to do is to learn, because in order to learn, you have to listen and you have to learn to listen. You said those words, learn to listen, because it doesn't appear to come naturally to people. I'm watching it all the time. There's three ways I've been told to listen, and you can listen while trying to develop your next sentence. You can listen with complete dismissal and doubt. In other words, you're not listening at all. You're just going, that ain't, and or you're that person who is like just waiting for you to stop talking so that you can get your next idea in there, so you can get your next thought in there. That's not listening either. You're just waiting for someone to stop talking so that you can continue to validate yourself. But there is another way of listening that just is really coming to peace. You have to quiet yourself to learn to listen. And then you have to be able to actually take the information in. You've got to be willing to hear it, right? To listen is more than to hear. Got
I
that?
think that what comes to mind on that is, and I can't remember how this was phrased, but I think Jesus said something to the effect that if you want to get into heaven, become like a child,
Yeah.
and and that's
I don't
kind of
remember
what
the
if
verse.
you watch a child, they're just like, what's next?
Uh-huh.
You know, this
Wow.
is awesome. Everything is amazing. What is that? A ball? Oh my
hmm
God. And, you know, and so if you key yourself into that wonderment, and the only thing that's provided me with that is the natural world. I mean, it
Yeah.
just, I would spend time hiking alone through the Sierra Madres for that very reason, as I just wanted to open myself up to the wonder of of the natural world and see
hmm
what happened, see where it took me, see what
Yeah.
it wanted to show me, and it was a hell of an adventure, and I love adventure. I mean, I just
hmm
love it. And
hmm
it's been a key to my whole. I mean, when I was reading Castaneda, I didn't know what he was talking about, but I loved the whole adventure aspect of it,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
thought, man, I want to go there. That's when I want to check that out. I want to experience that, and I did, and I
Yeah,
went there,
me too.
and
Unexplored realms of consciousness.
and it made me as a child. It really did. It allowed me to,
hmm Me too. I got to really become a,
and so I was too busy with that to be fearful,
yeah,
I mean, it just was. I mean, I literally my very first ceremony on Navajo land, I got attacked by a skinwalker, and
yeah,
I was terrified by it. But I immediately switched over into the next thing and was just like, whatever that was, whatever. Okay, now what about this? This is amazing. So it just he had no impact on me. I mean,
uh-huh,
stood the hair on my neck
Yeah.
stood the hair on my neck straight up, man. And I thought, God damn, that's scary. But I was in a protected circle, so he couldn't
Right.
get to me. But you know, but once he was gone, it was gone. It was over, and then I was on to the
Yeah.
next thing. Wow, what's happening next?
He
You know,
was just looking for an
so I
anchor.
yeah, so you know that part in me comes naturally. I mean, it really does, you know, and I don't think it comes. I think it can come naturally for most people, but I mean, I've been a rebel my whole life, you know,
Hmm.
and that are revolutionary because it's just part of my nature. And so,
Yeah.
but the key to that was I wanted wonderment, you know,
Yeah.
I wanted to be amazed. I was
All the
interested in
time.
becoming amazed, you know, and so I sought out things that would do that, and survived.
Right. Congratulations.
Yes, right, exactly. But so you know, I think in answer to your question, people have to become infatuated with wonderment.
Mm.
Does that sound right?
Allow themselves to be surprised. Yeah, I agree. That's going to be key to opening yourself up to new information because, like we've been talking, there's new energies that are coming down onto the planet. This is not um, rehashing a lot of old stuff. This is an actual new process that's coming down. It's going to look completely new and completely unexplored. And so once you become the explorer guy, then you have the opportunity to um, expand and grow bigger, right? It's the expansion of your soul. So there's your medicine right there. That's the earth medicine for the soul, is the ability to take in new information and allow yourself to become changed by it.
There you go. That's perfect. You know, and on that same note, I think a lot of things that if you're you know if you're keying into like the Bible or some religion where they talk about the burning bush or you know this experience or that experience and God was this and Jesus said that you know as though that was only happening then and it can't happen now. I think you're going to find that it's happening in the future a lot. You know, I think that I think the things that we're taking are seen as sort of a miraculous event that couldn't possibly happen again is going to start
Uh-huh.
happening a lot.
Yeah, and
You
it's going to
know, a
happen to
lot.
individual people. You're not going to have to go back and listen to the story of Moses and see how that
Right.
applies to you because now you're getting it straight from the source. And there's the new
Exactly.
energy, right? It's the
That
one
is
that
the new
says
energy.
you, everybody gets to do this. You all get to be the hero. You all get to be the prophet. You all get to be the angel of the Lord, if you want to put it in those terms. That's where we're going.
Absolutely.
Oscar, my
Absolutely.
mentor, calls it Homo Angelicus, which I thought was cute.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know, we're going to become beings who want to be human,
Mhm.
you know, and because we're multi-dimensional beings, you know, that have not had the opportunity to explore that part of ourselves
Yeah,
because there's nothing that the forces of darkness hate or fear more themselves than people becoming their authentic self. That is the most powerful expression of
yeah,
power on the planet because you are co-creating with the creator and there's no doubt involved. There's no
yeah,
superstition. There's no ignorance associated with
right.
it. You know, it's a real event that's happening in real time, and
Yeah,
that's going to become the norm. You know, I
yeah,
mean, it is
I agree. And I think that we need to make sure that we know that it's anchored in the earth as well, right? It's not something we're not going to rise up off of the planet, right? consciousness is going to shift, but we're still going to be made out of mud. We're still made of all of the stuff that is the earth, right? All of our atoms are still going to be earth atoms and star stuff and the same stuff we are now. But pulling all of that together now and bringing it into doggone warning signs, they make me lose my train of thought, and bringing it into a cognizant experience of earth and stars together. I think that's really what's going to determine which choice you're making, right? If you're going to be that connector person, or if you're going to be in denial and say there's nothing going on here but hatred and war.
No, I agree 100%. And what you have to do is you have to accept that the consciousness of the planet is changing rapidly,
Hmm.
and that was marked by the entrance into the Galactic Council. The acceptance into the Galactic Council marked, yeah, the astrologers are called the Age of Aquarius. Uh,
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, it's fine. But the consciousness and all this, all these
Mm.
expressions of the sun, the stuff
Uh-huh.
scientists can't, they don't have a label for anymore, And
Yeah.
so, these things are the recognition of the universe to the fact that Mother Earth has shifted her consciousness and elevated it into a new realm,
Yeah, I
And so
agree with that.
they're like gifting her, you earn this, now here's this. And we as the inhabitants, we have to shift with that. We have to become adaptive to
Yeah.
that. I mean, biologically, history shows that any species, they either adapt to the environment or they perish,
Uh-huh.
period. That's always been the way it is. Well, but that's been pretty much limited to the physical reality. Now we're
Yeah.
now we're keying into the spiritual reality. So
Hmm.
if you have to adapt to this new spiritual consciousness on the planet, or you will perish. It, that's just a fact, man.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Okay. Well, that looks pretty good. They've stopped giving me my timer again. That means our time is up. So I think that's a pretty good place to leave off, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to do the sign off thing that I normally do. Are you good with that? Okay, so thank you, everybody. I am Oakwalker, and that person I think who's over there is Stronghorse Caldwell. We are Earth Medicine for the Soul. Please come and visit us on our website, which is earth-ems.org. And you can see a lot more about what we're looking at, what we're trying to do, and what we're coming up with. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.